Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom with the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, the home of the arts in Barbados has been restored and is now officially opened. It's Queen's Park House, home to the iconic Daphne Joseph Hackett Theatre and Queen's Park Gallery. The $6.9 million restoration was completed in August, just in time for Carifesta 13. But the facility was officially reopened by Prime Minister Crandall Stewart last night. And Culture Minister Stephen Lashley described the finished product as a significant investment in culture and the arts.
The overarching objective of the entire restoration redevelopment project is for the redesign of the buildings to create a fully functional premier cultural urban center for the arts, especially the performing arts, visual arts, and the literary arts within this UNESCO World Heritage Site.
He says there is also a wider vision for the area, including the possible erection of a wall of fame for local artists and the renaming of Queen's Park to National Heroes Park. He says the renovated Daphne Joseph Hackett Theatre can now seat up to 200 patrons, with 8 spaces reserved for people with disabilities, among other amenities.
With these current renovations, we have created a permanent home for theatre arts in Barbados, contributing positively to the conversation regarding the demand for purpose-built theatre spaces and hopefully a rejuvenation for the art form.
Meantime, Chief Executive Officer of the NCF, Cranston Brown, says the reopening of the theatre celebrates the return to the space which has propelled the careers of most of the island's noted artists. He says it's also happening at a time when the creative arts are being positioned as one of the drivers of the economy.
With that in mind, we in the National Cultural Foundation believe the time is right to seize the opportunity for a meaningful dialogue with the various artistic and cultural groups and fraternities on furthering developing the key ingredients that will support Barbadian culture within the mandate of the NCF.
And lauding the gallery as one of the legacies of Carifesta 13, Mr. Brown also encouraged local artists to make the most of the momentum created by the festival. Legislative help is on the way to aid Barbados's efforts to combat predial larceny. Shane Jones spoke to Chief Agricultural Officer Lennox Chandler on the sidelines of the Ministry of Agriculture's workshop on the plague to the industry.
A draft bill has been prepared to take to the floor of Parliament very soon to directly address the scourge of predial larceny on the island. It is called the Protection of Agricultural Products and Livestock Bill 2017 and Protection of Agricultural Products and Livestock Regulations 2017. Chief Agricultural Officer Lennox Chandler says the bill will make provision for the regulation of farmers and vendors and the prevention and control of predial larceny.
It's not only going to address predial larceny per se, but it's going to address registration of farmers and vendors and stuff. So it captures a wider audience, if you want to call it that. In the past, the old act would have focused mainly on livestock and crops and would have excluded equipment and other stuff. That is also going to be captured in the new piece of legislation.
The bill proposes a small fee for agriculture practitioners.
We want farmers and vendors and people to understand that there will be a fee associated with registration and acquiring your ID cards and stuff, and if you lose them for any reason, there'll be a replacement fee as well. So it's not going to be no exorbitant fee, but it's something that you have to pay.
Mr. Chandler said the workshop also served the purpose of getting feedback and suggestions from the public on how they think the issue should be addressed, since the ministry cannot do everything on its own.
The Ministry of Agriculture is not a police station or police force by any stretch of the imagination. So it's not our responsibility to enforce any type of legislation. Yes, we can assist in formulating the legislation, and we can support in certain areas in terms of a predial larceny deaths. Not even a hotline, because I think the hotline should be more in the police station than the ministry, because the ministry is not open 24 hours. So the hotline would probably be best placed in the police station.
The chief agriculture officer believes changing the way Barbadians view the industry is also a big part of the solution.
People seem to think in Barbados that if you pass down the road and see a mango tree, they can go and pick mangoes because nobody plant the tree or some sort of foolishness. So there's a lack of respect for property. Because I'm sure if you would probably stop and say, I could get 2 mangoes, the owner may say they give you a 2 or even 6, but people won't go and pick clean the tree out as though it's theirs. So that issue of respect for people's property is something that we have to face.
The bill is expected to reach the floor of Parliament in the coming months. Shane Jones, CBC News.
Barbados remains committed to the new international standards referred to as the BEPS Treaty and its implementation. BEPS, base erosion and profit shifting, is aimed at closing loopholes in tax treaties. In July last year, the island became the 101st jurisdiction to join the inclusive framework for the global implementation of the BEPS project. International Business Minister Donville Innes says Barbados' draft multilateral instrument is being prepared. Mr. Innes told the International Business Week conference ongoing at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Centre it should be signed before the end of the year.
The instrument is an important element of BEPS action plan and is one of the 4 minimum standards required in order to implement the tax treaty-related aspect of BEPS. I only wish, ladies and gentlemen, that I was able to make this speech in the Canadian Parliament, where I could certainly enlighten those active and engaging politicians as to how Barbados' international business and financial services sector has been of tremendous benefit to the Canadian economy. But I leave that to my good friends in Invest Barbados to get the message out there and constantly remind them.
Mr. Innes also gave an update on the OECD's review of Barbados.
IBC, ISRL, International Trust, qualified insurance companies, exempt insurance company regimes, those were listed as in the process of being amended since the Barbados government commitment to the OECD to amend these regimes to bring them in line with the BEPS Action 5 standard. The IFSA and credit for qualifying overseas projects regimes were listed as potentially harmful, and work continues with the OECD to make a final determination on these regimes, which will determine the next steps. And the FIA was listed as out of scope, as well as the review of the shipping regime that continues.
The Barbados International Business Association says the sector is resilient despite the challenges. President Marlon Walron wants players to remain committed to making Barbados the #1 domicile of choice in the Western Hemisphere.
Rumors about us closing for business or that the OECD's base erosion and profit shifting initiative is somehow a mark that marks the end of this sector is nothing more than a fable. It is nothing short of shocking that someone with access to the media and who should know better and who really benefited from international business would say that it is a mistake to start the international business sector in Barbados. What a statement.
Mr. Walron also welcomed recent news that the island is revoking the licenses of 4 international businesses.
This is a very firm, incontrovertible evidence that Barbados' regulatory machinery is working and is efficient and effective. This can only have a positive impact on our global reputation. The question constantly being posed by those in authority has now been answered. We now have documented evidence that the regulations are working.
An economist is telling Barbados that high professional standards in the civil service is key to good governance. Chairman of Intelligence Capital Limited of the UK, Professor Avinash Prasad, says the civil service should never be a place for workers who cannot do other tasks.
It must always be a place that professionals aspire to be. Competition and the development of skills must be the principal lines of defense against poor standards. But poor standards cannot be tolerated either. There is room for a bargain that boosts all.
Professor Prasad says the quality of a country's governance is key to the success of its international business sector. He says the business of international business is changing.
We'll be less tax-focused and more service-oriented. Tax will no longer be a competitive advantage. It'll be just one of the necessary things you will have to have. An industry, though, of course, reflects its past rather than its future. And it has been a difficult message to give and to receive. I understand that.
A valiant attempt by a 45-year-old Grenadian photojournalist to save his wife from drowning ended up costing him his own life. The incident reportedly occurred around 7:30 this morning while 45-year-old Roland Williams was at Brandon's Beach with his wife. Preliminary investigations suggest that Williams' wife got into difficulties in the water and he went to rescue her. Having assisted his wife to safety, Williams also got into difficulties and his lifeless body was later pulled from the water. Williams and his wife have been living and working in Barbados for a number of years. Police investigations are continuing. The Democratic Labour Party's General Secretary has given an update on one of the resolutions of the DLP's 62nd annual conference held earlier this year. At the conference, a resolution was filed for the requirement of a legal education certificate to practice law in Barbados. During a media briefing today, DLP General Secretary George Pilgrim reported that the request to write to the Office of the Attorney General was now completed. He read extracts from the letter while apologizing for the delay resulting from extensive research.
The members of the Democratic Labour Party are not satisfied with the manner in which the matter surrounding the requirements to practice law in Barbados has been attended to. Therefore, the attached resolution passed at the 62nd annual conference of the DLP is calling on the Office of the Attorney General to make clear all of the legal requirements to practice law in Barbados. And if any member of the House of Assembly is in breach of such stipulations, I want to say that to the members of the party that your letter has finally been completed after being vetted and will be delivered as so instructed.
And that letter will be delivered tomorrow. Some lucky students taking the 2018 Barbados Secondary Schools entrance examination will have a head start thanks to the youth arm of the Democratic Labour Party. During a press briefing at the party's George Street headquarters this afternoon, Young Democrats President Curtis Cave launched the inaugural 11+ Lessons program.
This program seeks to provide one-on-one tutoring assistance for those students in classes 3 and 4 who would need additional assistance, but through the circumstances their parents would not be able to afford this additional assistance for them, so paying for lessons. So this initiative seeks to predominantly target but not limited to students in the urban areas and the St. Michael surrounding areas, to utilize volunteers also to tutor these lessons to these students as well.
Well, the lessons program will be housed at the Ellerslie Secondary School, and representative for the area, James Paul, attended the launch to make a personal contribution of some school supplies. Application forms for the program will be distributed at DLP headquarters and at schools in the area of the constituency of St. Michael West Central. Mr. Paul, representative for the area, says the initiative is consistent with the work that he's been doing.
I'm very pleased to see that Young Democrats can actually carry out this initiative, and it demonstrates a faith in the main foundations upon which the party has been built. We have stressed education over the years, and despite the challenging times that we are facing today, we are still coming up with innovative means to emphasize the importance of education as a means of changing one's circumstances.
Providing adequate space and opportunities for early education for the country's children is high on the agenda for the Ministry of Education. Word of this from Education Minister Ronald Jones at the opening of the country's newest nursery school. Sharika Griffith tells us more.
The opening of this facility brings to 12 the number of government-run nursery schools across the island. Minister of Education Ronald Jones says there are several theories which suggest that the early years of a child's life are important for establishing a firm foundation for future learning and life in general. It's for this reason that Barbados and many countries worldwide are ensuring that every child, regardless of their background, has access to a proper learning environment.
The government of Barbados during this period has completely refocused, along with the assistance of the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, its attention on early childhood education. Not that it has shifted emphasis from primary, secondary, and post-secondary and tertiary education, but because of this deep recognition and the heavy enunciation in the Millennium Development Goals, part of the UN UNESCO Global Initiative on Education, moving persons into literacy and numeracy through 15-year development plans and enunciations.
Minister Jones made the comments at the official opening of the Maria Holder Nursery School in Oldbury, St. Philip. The school welcomed its first students in September, and during the ceremony showed off some of their newfound knowledge, much to the delight of the audience. It's the third school to bear the Maria Holder name, following the construction of the facilities at Sharon in St. Thomas and Gall Hill in Christchurch. The Trust intends to build 6 nurseries in all, as this was the number identified by Minister Jones in order to adequately satisfy the demand for early education.
We didn't know where we were going to put them at that time because we had to look at the demographics and how students would have satisfied those demographics. So I was able to tell them, look, 6 schools, around 100, 120 students per school, and at least a few at 150 or thereabouts. And we would, along with the private sector, because we're not shutting out entrepreneurial behavior, we would have been able to satisfy that demand.
The facility cost $4 million to construct, and work began in December 2015. The keys were officially handed over in January this year. Trustee Michael Russell says this project is by far the charity's greatest undertaking.
I want you to be aware that this is far and away the biggest project that this charity has undertaken anywhere, and reference was made to my other responsibilities. As part of our organisation, we do have other charitable institutions that operate in other parts of the world. And even if I take our whole universe, this is far and away the biggest project we're doing.
The school currently has 72 students and 7 teachers. It expects to reach its full complement of 90 students next term, when an additional 18 children reach the age of 3. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
We'll take a break here, but when we come back, more news, sports, and the weather. Stay with us.
It started with my love for making things. That became a business. And when I wanted to expand, I chose a partner that could help me build on my vision. A partner that made growing my business easier with fewer steps. That's banking that starts with me.
It starts with you. Scotiabank.
We listened to what you had to say and tore up the old rules because losing what you paid for is just wrong. Now lost data and talk are a thing of the past. Only Digicel gives you unlimited rollover data and talk. Just buy and renew your Quick Pick bundle before it expires and keep what's rightfully yours. Never lose what you don't use. Go to My Digicel app to bundle up and roll over today. Digicel.
The Salvation Army Barbados Division takes this time to appeal to all Barbadians to support this effort to help our Caribbean brothers and sisters in Dominica, who are desperately in need of the following items: canned foods and other non-perishable foods, bottled water, Pampers, children and adults, children educational material, bed cots. These items can be donated to the Salvation Army at their other institutions across Barbados, or call 426-2467 or 228-1361, and arrangements will be made to collect these donations. Please note no clothing necessary. We also welcome any monetary donations to this effort through our local account at Scotiabank, account number 000-901-9858, the Salvation Army Appeal.
Do you want audience numbers? Over 140,000 people are watching Morning Barbados and the evening news. 6 out of 10 top radio personalities are found right here at the CBC. CBC delivers the audience you need.
Hundreds of teachers in Barbados will celebrate Teachers Professional Day tomorrow, and all schools will be closed. However, the Ministry of Education, Science, Technology and Innovation has encouraged the management of schools to organize activities for professional development and the advancement of their institutions. Several activities have been planned at the nursery, primary and secondary level throughout the day. As the 2018 Dance Fest competition approaches, organizers are appealing for dancers to come forward. The event's National Artistic Director, John Hunt, is hoping to have several genres included in the competition.
The last edition we had line dance, and we're looking to see if we can have more people from line dance community participate. We're reaching out to the chair dance community as well as the aerobics communities, but also junior cores of community groups, so their junior members could also participate in doing fusions or aspects of their activity, as well as the various street dance groups.
Registration has started and forms can be collected from any community centre or the Warren's office complex. Acting Deputy Chief Community Development Officer Alexis Nurse says auditions will begin from this weekend.
This year, the calendar of events are that we're going to have auditions on the 21st and 22nd, which will be Saturday and Sunday of this month, which is just coming up now, and those will be held at the Parkinson Center. And then we're going to have our prelims at, depending really on how many groups we have, they're likely to be at the Parkinson Resource Center, the Ivy and Spitestown, and that would be around about the 28th and 29th of October.
Well, driving along Prior Park Main Road could soon be an easier task for motorists. That's according to Commerce Minister and MP for St. James South, Donville Innes. He says he's requested that the numerous potholes along that road be repaired as soon as possible.
As a road that's heavily trafficked, it's not a matter for St. James South alone and my constituents in that part of it, but all those road users who have to traverse that road on a daily basis become very dangerous for them. And Minister Michael actually understands the real concerns. He has seen it and has assured me that that will be dealt with as a matter of urgency. Likewise, there's some secondary roads or some roads off the main roads and some of the middle-income developments in particular that have not been attended to for many years, and we are working as best as we can to address them one by one.
In news from the upper house now, a government senator does not think it's a good idea to leave it to individual companies to develop their own handbooks on sexual harassment. Senator Andre Worrell says it's imperative that the Ministry of Labour takes the lead on this to ensure there is uniformity in regulations across the board.
Right-thinking companies will introduce the necessary training programs for their managers, and not only for managers and supervisors, but for every single employee. That the Ministry of Labour should possibly have training programs and seminars for all companies that persons will be well aware of what are the procedures in the Sexual Harassment Prevention Bill, how you should conduct yourself in the work environment, and what are the procedures as well if you have to make a complaint and how that is dealt with.
Another government senator wants to know what protections are in place under the new sexual harassment legislation to protect workers who make complaints. Reverend Senator Dr. David Durant wants even more protection for people who remain in the workplace after their complaints are addressed. He says unscrupulous bosses might wait a few months and then fire their complaining worker.
Because yes, we have the bill here now to really bring the problems to the surface and make sure they are ventilated and they are worked on. And I'm really applauding the bill for this. But even though after that has happened and the person still remains in employment, it is still at the mercy of that employer, especially if it's the employer who is responsible. Now, if it's a supervisor or someone under, well, the person can still remain in the employment, I'm sure.
Enforcing the sexual harassment prevention bill could be the start of a cultural revolution in Barbados. This is according to Senator Verla de Pisa, who says the statement that sexual harassment is part of the island's culture shows how entrenched the practice is in society. She adds, however, that the legislation is a turning point and will force Barbadians to face up to what they don't like in society and change it.
I, like all other females, look forward to the day when we can walk down the street and don't hear a single psst. We know the difference between a compliment and disrespect. We feel it in our bones. We know when to grab our purses closer to our bodies and walk a little faster. And I speak about the females in the firm understanding that men experience it too.
Senator de Pisa also suggests it might be time for Barbados to set up an industrial court. She says the Chief Labour Officer and Employment Rights Tribunal could be inundated with sexual harassment cases, especially where employers don't uphold their end of the process. Well, Barbadians are being asked to note that all high and magistrates courts will start at 1 p.m. tomorrow. This late start is to allow members of the court and the Barbados Bar Association to pay tribute to the late Director of Public Prosecutions, Charles Leacock QC, the late Theodore Walcott QC, former magistrate, and the late Eli Edwards, former public counsel in the Supreme Court Number 1, and that will begin at 10 a.m. Any inconvenience caused is regretted. As the opposition Barbados Labour Party gears up for its 79th annual General Conference next week, Barbadians are being assured that the party is united. And the BLP's General Secretary, Senator Jerome Walcott, says there will be no elections at the conference, which will run from October 26th to 29th in Queen's Park. The disclosure came this morning at a press conference to share plans for the event.
In spite of what may be said by some of our detractors, we are united, focused, and indeed ready for the difficult task ahead of rebuilding our country. As testament to this, there will be no elections for executive positions at this year's conference, as the current members of our executive have been returned unopposed for the year 2017-2018. The party chairman will be Mr. George Payne, first vice chairman Ms. Cynthia Ford, second vice chairman Mr. Dwight Sutherland, third vice chairman Mr. Edmund Hinkson, treasurer Mr. Reginald Farley, and general secretary yours truly.
Despite the changes, the party still intends to honor outstanding Barbadians and groups for their contributions in several disciplines.
Examples of some of the special awardees would be Mr. Wayne Adamson, an outstanding mixologist from Barbados who has gone on to represent the Barbadian team at the culinary festivals around the world. Ren is an incredible inspiration to young people, and we felt the need to showcase his good work and encourage other young Barbadians to follow his lead. Another person or organization which is receiving an award is the Political Science Association of the Barbados Community College.
And still to come, a look at some of the stories making headlines across the region.
It started with my love for making things. That became a business. And when I wanted to expand, I chose a partner that could help me build on my vision. A partner that made growing my business easier with fewer steps. That's banking that starts with me.
It starts with you. Scotiabank.
Help support the restoration efforts for the hundreds of thousands affected by catastrophic hurricanes. Donate to the Red Cross Hurricane Relief account at any branch of the following: CIBC First Caribbean, account number 10011633436. First Citizens, 500-900-00588. RBC Royal Bank, 210-05073. And Republic Bank, 01804-153-1001. Monies raised will be sent to the International Red Cross for its restoration work for affected persons. Appeal closes 30th November 2017. Persons wishing to post checks should make these out to Red Cross Hurricane Relief Appeal account and post to Barbados Red Cross Society, P.O. Box 300 Bridgetown, or hand deliver to the Red Cross Warrens headquarters. The Barbados Red Cross and commercial banks, on behalf of the victims of catastrophic hurricanes, thank all persons and businesses for their contributions.
Liat is expected to end the year with a loss of $13.25 million as a result of the extreme weather during this hurricane season. And to help the carrier cope, shareholder governments have secured a $7 million loan. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent and the Grenadines told a press conference earlier this week that between June and September, Liat cancelled 408 flights compared with 67 in 2016. Dr. Gonsalves, who is chair of Liat's shareholder governments, says the airline lost a lot of revenue because it could not fly into Dominica, St. Martin, Tortola, or Puerto Rico, all of which were battered by hurricanes over the past 2 months. Grenada's Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell does not foresee an escalation in industrial action being taken by public service unions. Public servants across that country were asked to stay home on Monday after leaving their offices at midday on Friday. Dr. Mitchell says the government has already paid millions to public workers and the current demands are unreasonable. 58-year-old Bishop Charles Jason Gordon of the Diocese of Bridgetown is soon to be installed the 13th Archbishop of Port of Spain. He will replace Archbishop Joseph Harris, who submitted his letter of resignation to the Pope in March when he turned 75. Bishop Gordon was consecrated Bishop of Bridgetown and Kingstown on September 21st, 2011, and that was a week after Archbishop Joseph Harris was ordained co-adjunctor Archbishop of Port of Spain. Well, sports news is up next, but first here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
A benign lump is a lump that is not cancerous. This tip is brought to you in association with the Barbados Cancer Society Breast Screening Program, celebrating its 15th anniversary.